The Book of Heaven, Volume 4, December 23rd, 1900. Louisa writes, After having gone through long days of silence between me and blessed Jesus, I felt a void in my interior. This morning on coming, he told me, My beloved, what do you want to tell me, that you so much yearn to speak with me? And I, feeling all ashamed, said, My sweet Jesus, I want to tell you that I ardently yearn for you and for your holy volition, and if you concede this to me, you will make me fully content and happy. And he added, In one word, you have grasped everything by asking me for what is greatest in heaven and on earth. And I, in this holy volition, yearn and want to conform you more to it. And so that my volition may be more sweet and enjoyable for you, place yourself in the circle of my will and admire its different qualities. By pausing now in the sanctity of my volition, now in the goodness, now in the humility, now in the beauty, and now in the peaceful dwelling that my volition produces. And in these pausings you will acquire even more new and unheard of news about my holy volition, and you will become so bound to and enamored of it that you will never go out again, and this will bring you a highest advantage, because being in my will, you will have no need to fight against your passions, and to be always at arms with them. For while they seem to be dying, they are born again more strong and alive, but rather, without fighting, without clamour, smoothly they die, because before the sanctity of my will, passions do not dare to come forward. They lose life by themselves. And if the soul feels the movement of her passions, it is a sign that she does not make a continuous dwelling within the bounds of my volition. She makes some exits, some little escapes into her own volition, and is forced to smell the stench of a corrupted nature. On the other hand, if you remain fixed in my will, you will be completely free of trouble, and your only occupation will be loving me and being loved by me in return. After this, as I looked at blessed Jesus, I saw he had the crown of thorns. I removed it very gently, and I placed it upon my head. He drove it into me and disappeared, and I found myself inside myself with an ardent desire to remain in his most holy will. Side note, the word will translates from the Italian volontà. We know from the writings of Louisa that the will of God is the boundless container which contains all the acts of God, and that the will of God and the acts of God possesses the same qualities as the nature of God. They are infinite, omnipotent, eternal, as God is. The word volition translates from the Italian volia. This word indicates the will in act. This distinction could be relevant in the case of a human will and of human acts, which are finite and limited, as they possess the same qualities as the human nature. Therefore, they have a beginning and an end, so we could distinguish between whether they are in act or not. But when we speak of will of God and volition of God, the distinction does not exist. In fact, the will of God is, yes, the boundless container of all the acts of God. But we know that the acts of God are always in act, always present, and therefore there is no distinction between whether these acts are in or not the acts of God. The acts of God are simply always and eternally in act. Therefore, though there may be a semantic difference between the words will and volition, when referring to God, an actual distinction disappears, because in God, will and will in act, volition, are exactly the same. So when we find the two words in the writings of Louisa, we can interpret them in the same way, just as in Italian. Divina volontà and divino volia are used interchangeably, and mean exactly the same. So do divine will and divine volition.